What a season, right? What's going on, guys? This is Mr. DeLorian to a brand new video, and welcome to my episode 16 of season 9, the finale, The Storm breakdown review. So let's hop right into this episode, immediately right into the breakdown. So this episode has kind of two major plot points, which is one, the kingdom trying to get to Hilltop in Alexandria, and the next is basically just Alexandria in general. So let's start off with the kingdom one, since that's the most, I guess you could say, complex. So this episode kind of starts off with basically showing everything that's going wrong at the kingdom. Basically, like, the pipes are leaking, everything's like just going to shit, everything's going wrong, like they can't like hold on. And there's some really nice moments in the beginning between like Daryl and Lydia. Basically, Daryl like bring Lydia food, saying like, hey, eat this and everything, like, you know, just being nice. And then eventually, obviously, they all leave the kingdom because obviously the place is literally going to hell and it's just not working out. So and like later in the episode, there was like kind of all on the road, and this part's actually pretty interesting. Now, obviously, as you guys know, if you saw the sneak peeks, I don't really need to explain like too much of what happened like between Daryl, Carol, and like, you know, Lydia. But there was an interesting moment that I'll probably make a separate video about, where basically Alden is like kind of like, well, there's like kind of walkers in the field, and Alden basically looks to Lydia and says, "Are those your people?" You know, and like basically starts like kind of, I guess, harassing her a little bit. And Daryl basically looks at Alden and says, "Knock it off, leave her alone," or anything. And then Alden kind of just backs off and everything, which still gives Lydia a very rude, like really angry look, which there might be something into that in season 10. So basically, besides all the road stuff, they like eventually say, we got to get off the roads, we got to get inside before the next like waypoint, which I'm assuming is their next checkpoint, to like, you know, be safe. So basically, I think Aaron suggests to go to the sanctuary, so they all go to the sanctuary and everything. And now this is actually pretty interesting. Well, actually, before they get to the sanctuary, Daryl and Ezekiel have their talk, where basically Ezekiel tells Daryl, saying, you know, me and Carol just like to be alone or anything without, I guess, other people, which basically means him. So at the sanctuary, there's two, like, I think, talks that go on, really. Daryl talks with Carol, basically, like, saying, oh, well, I could take, basically, Carol says, what did, like, Ezekiel say to you? And I think Daryl basically says it, and then says, I could take, like, you know, Lydia somewhere and, like, keep her safe by myself. But obviously, Carol denies and basically says no, and they have a really nice heartfelt moment. I think Carol even ends up crying, which, you know, it's not that big, but to me it is. And next, Michonne and I think Ezekiel have like kind of like a moment where they kind of talk about like future plans and everything, kind of just like stuff like, oh, we need to get them, like, you know, to the hilltop if we want them all to survive and everything, stuff like that. And then cuts the next morning and everything, and they're back on the road, kind of just like heading for Hilltop. And eventually they get to Hilltop, which is actually, that's a little bit forward, actually. So there's this big part in the episode where they basically have to cross Alpha's borders, and Ezekiel looks terrified of these borders. He's just like he just doesn't look really happy and everything, because he's probably like basically like has like PTSD from staring at these like pipes, considering that this is where his son died. So eventually they cross into the borders, and they end up going onto the lake, which is, I think, something that was mentioned in the sneak peek, or one of the sneak peeks, is they basically go onto this lake that's like full of ice. It's basically below the bridge that Rick basically blew up and everything. So they end up crossing that. It's just, it's not really too, like, you know, it's definitely like intense, but they end up crossing the lake, everyone's fine. But while they're doing this, Lydia ends up running off and Carol goes after her. Now, their moment together was basically, they talk. Lydia says, I can't kill myself, because I think early in the episode she tried having a walker bite her and everything. Carol saw that, and, you know, she stopped herself. But like Lydia basically tells Carol, I need you to kill me, I can't do it myself, I caused Henry's death, you know, I need you to kill me, it needs to be you. And she basically says no one will know about it, like, and everything, and no one will care anyway because no one wants me here. And she says, I'm weak just like my mother. And I feel like this is where it really hit Carol. Maybe because obviously Carol's felt weak before and everything, but she always got back up. So she basically like takes the spear away from Lydia's neck and basically says, you're not weak, let's go, and holds her hand and everything. They go walking up back to the group and cross the lake. So eventually they get to the hilltop, which it's very cool and everything when they like show up and everything. Like the snow, I forgot to mention the snow. It's like full out snow in this episode, like full on blizzard mode. So they eventually make it to the hilltop, and basically everyone kind of like reunites and just says, hey. And the only really major moment in this kind of like scene is really basically, I think, Carol and like Ezekiel and everything talking, and basically Carol says, I can't do this anymore, we need to break up. And then I said in my spoilers video basically what happens there. So yeah, eventually they just make it to the hilltop, and then Carol says, I'm going with everyone else to Alexandria. which they end up going to Alexandria near like this, which is the second plot point. Now, the second plot point is Alexandria. Now, back at Alexandria, there's basically like a huge snowstorm, obviously, and they're having a very hard time holding up. Basically, Negan's lava is still and everything, because obviously I think Gabriel says we can't leave him down there, he'll freeze to death. So they're all kind of having their moment and everything inside. Like, I think one of the houses, they're like sitting by the fire. I think Negan's basically chained up by Rosita, so he doesn't, like do anything, which honestly I don't think he really would at this point. He knows he'd probably be killed, and I think he's changed. So they have like a couple funny moments that were shown sneak peeks, and I think the moments between them were really like cool. Like, there was just tons of funny moments between like Eugene, Gabriel, Sadiq, and Negan. Well, and also like Judith and everything's in the room and everything. But then something happens where I think they are like lighting a fire, but I think something inside like the chimney did something, and it ended up exploding, and Eugene did kind of his talking and everything. And I think this is actually pretty funny, but Eugene basically gives a rundown why like the chimney exploded, why the fire basically exploded, and Negan basically looks at Eugene and says, "God, I am so happy to see you. It's been such a long time." And Eugene says, "I feel differently," and everything. It's just really funny. So obviously they have to move to a new house because there's no fire in there, meaning like there's no like warmth, because obviously it's like basically blizzard town outside. So they end up basically packing up all their shit and starting to head towards, I think, Aaron's house to all like kind of coop up in there. So while they're in the middle, because like they're all holding on to this like one line or anything, in the middle of this, basically Judith hears dog off in the distance and goes running after her, or running after the dog and everything. So Negan sees, because obviously Negan's kind of in like this line right here, and I think they unchained him just so they could get him there without like any like trouble. So Negan sees like Judith running off after the dog and everything. Negan basically runs and darts off after Judith. Now here's the thing, during this, like while he's looking for Judith in this snowstorm, it's so cool because it's kind of a different side to Negan that we never saw. Basically, like, it's just really unique. You need to watch this episode to understand it. But yeah, Negan gets his ass kicked basically in this like snowstorm, because there's pieces of debris flying around like Alexandria, and I think obviously it's super windy and everything, and he gets hit all over the place. So eventually he finds Judith because the dog's like barking and everything, and Negan brings like Judith over to this kind of shed. I like inside, kind of like the outside, like on the side of the shed, and Negan basically wraps Judith up, says some really funny dialogue and everything. It was actually kind of weird that he was saying all that dialogue, because he was saying all of that and they're out in the blizzard and they're both basically freezing and everything. He just says like all this funny dialogue, and it was just really weird. It's almost as if he just wasn't worried about the situation at all, which was actually kind of funny and kind of, cool. So Negan basically eventually gets Judith and dog and like himself back to, the building where everyone was at. So the next morning kind of rolls around Alexandria, and Negan is in kind of like I guess like the nurse's office or whatever, because his leg got hit by debris and everything and cut. So basically everyone shows up to Alexandria, like Carol, Daryl, Aaron, Lydia, and like a couple of other characters and everything that I forgot. And then as soon as they walk through those gates, I think, as soon as they walk through the gates, there's this massive snow fight between everyone. Daryl, like Carol, Lydia, and just like Michonne and Judith, RJ, and like tons of other characters, and it's just such a fun and cool moment that like was put into this episode, which I'm so glad it was. Now the final moment is not the final moment, but another moment is basically Negan and like Michonne basically have a talk about like how they cross the borders. I'm actually kind of confused how Negan knew about the Whisperers, but he like they have like a really nice moment together where they kind of talk. Michonne actually really I can't speak, but kind of like, has a heart-to-heart with Negan, actually doesn't like saying wise-ass comments, which was just nice to see between like the both of them. Now the final one of the episode, which probably was like the most like shock value and everything else was just kind of nice and all this stuff, but this was the most shock. So I think Ezekiel is basically on the radio talking with Judith and everything about just like, just things. And basically Judith near like the end of the conversation says, "I need to go do my homework." Ezekiel signs off, leaves the room, and then it happens. There's this like other voice. It's kind of very like, I'll kind of even try to decrypt what they're saying. Like, he's like, you could kind of hear something, but you really need to focus in. It's kind of static of someone talking, but no one's in the room to hear it. This was just so cool. So this episode was probably my all-time favorite in the second half of season 9B, not in like the entire season, but in like the second half of season 9B, mainly because it showed just so much progression, so much amazing moments, funny moments definitely, We got to see Negan's like amazing side and like how everyone's just kind of welcoming him in, like all that nice moments. So yeah, this was an amazing wrap up to season 9. I honestly can't wait till season 10. Make sure to leave your thoughts down below on this season or anything, because I definitely can't wait till next season. Make sure to stay tuned for like when info starts coming out about that, which won't be for a while. But I hope you guys did enjoy this like, you know, breakdown review and all these like all these like episodes that like reviews that I did and everything, all these like Walking Dead videos that I do, because obviously these aren't stopping. I'm definitely gonna continue doing them. But I hope you guys did enjoy, and yeah, see you guys later. Peace, amigos, and peace out.